Hey guys, it's Ben with design3, and today I'm talking to Edmund McMillen, who is the artist and game designer for Team Meat. Worked on games such as Super Meat Boy and The Binding of Isaac. How you doing today, Edmund?
I'm doing all right today.
Cool. So how did you, what are some of the first video games you started playing? What are some of your all-time favorite video games?
I started playing games, actually the first game I ever played was my dad's handheld football game, which was like in 82, 83. I had no idea what, you just move the little dot around and you're moving away. I don't think there was actually any football involved. I think you just run across and try not to hit the other things.
Yeah.
I really liked that a lot. And then I think I got an Atari, I think a 2600 when I was 4 or 5. And I had like Jungle Hunt and I played Pac-Man a lot, you know, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was like a bit stagnant till like I turned 10. I think I got my first NES when I was 10, and I was the last kid on my block to get an NES. So I had literally like break into my friend's house when they, like if I was sick from school and they went to school, I would break into their house and like play Mario 2. I got caught once by his mom. What the hell are you doing in my house? But yeah, like the biggest ones for me though were Zelda. When I finally got an NES, Zelda was like totally magic. That was just like the most magical game I'd ever played. Mario 2 was a really big one too. Just creatively, the characters and stuff were just really cool. Like, I really admired the design of the characters, and even though I knew it wasn't, you know, now I know it wasn't actually a Mario game, and it was just customized to be a Mario game. I still like, that game's a great game, and thematically and the designs of the characters were just so awesome that they just became part of the series, even though they weren't really made for the series. I always thought that was really cool. And then Castlevania was another big one originally that really grabbed me. Just had a really cool theme. Like when I was little, I really liked this movie called Monster Squad. And like Castlevania was like a Monster Squad type game where it's like, I want to fight all the monsters, like all of them. Mummy, you know, vampires and Frankensteins, and I had this like little thing on my wall. I forget what they were called, but they were like these stickers that could be restuck. I don't remember what they were called, but it was like a little poster you put on your wall and you could restick the stickers, and it was like almost like a Castlevania theme, but it was like a, you know, classic movie monster stuff. And you could set it up like a video game where you had like guys in different positions and you could make it look like he's kicking the bat and stuff like that. And I would like make up little levels and play through when I was little on my wall. But yeah, those, and then Street Fighter was the other big one. I think I was probably like 11 or 12 by then though. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but I spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of money on Street Fighter, and that was a really, really great game. It still is.
So if you had to pick maybe just one video game character as your favorite, who would that be?
God, I have no idea.
I
don't know. I don't think I can. There really isn't anything specific that stands out. There's a few odd characters that I really like. I really like the Shy Guys from Mario 2. Yeah. I even had a character that was based on a Shy Guy from one of my old games called P-Shy, which is where the name comes from. And he has a mask, just like the Shy Guys. I thought they were really cool. I like a lot of the characters, like I said, in Mario 2. The weird stuff, like the masks, just really bizarre stuff. Like the weirder the better. Yeah. Yeah, and like even Castlevania 2, there's that like mask that would cry blood.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what the fuck it was, but yeah. I like the mood of that too. Like, there's not really like a definitive character. Like, I love Zelda, but I'm not, you know, really a fan of Link. The character itself is not really a huge thing for me, but.
If there was, like, do you have an all-time favorite video game soundtrack? Like any music that stands out to you?
Yeah, Mario 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I can remember all the songs. Like in Mario 2, I think I just played it a lot. I really like the Ghosts and Goblins theme a lot. You know, just the Mario and Zelda stuff, the really iconic soundtracks, and of course like Castlevania. Yeah. All the games I've mentioned that are just like burned into my brain because I played them so many. Yeah.
So how did you first get started in video game development?
It depends on when you define it. Like I first became interested in video games and actually being involved in video games when I was in high school. The first time I really got interested was when they put out the editor for Duke Nukem 3D, and that's all I did. Like all I did was like made my school and run around shooting teachers and stuff like that. It's the stuff that you'd be like in trouble for now.
Right.
It was totally cool back then. Every kid who made like a video game mod definitely made their high school.
Yeah.
That would be like the biggest no-no in the world now. But that definitely got me interested. It's like it seemed so fun, and I couldn't believe that people got paid to do this because it was a game in itself, and I thought it was so cool. And I would download mods. It was all mods. Like I was just really into mods and like Quake and everything like that. And then I got into this thing called Click and Play, which was like a game maker type thing, really, really basic. Like I was able to make a platformer within minutes, and I was starting to teach myself pixel animation and stuff like that. And then that was just like in like freshman year of high school, and then I just put it down, and because it just seemed like it seemed fun to do, and I didn't think of it as an option for the future because, maybe perception has changed on how video games work, but back then I was 100% positive that there's no way I could ever, if I ever got a job at a company, my voice would never be heard. I would be an animator or an illustrator. I wouldn't be a designer because, I didn't design games, and, I just, it didn't seem interesting to me at all because I only wanted to work on stuff that I liked, and I wanted to be the one in control. And that's like kind of that's just how I work. And I kind of broke away from games and started doing comics because that's something that I could do by myself. And I did that for many years. And then, once I turned 20 is when I got tired of doing just printed comics, and I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't really making money off of it. And I decided I wanted a larger audience, so I took my comics online, and that kind of pushed me into, like, I wanted to make a website. So I learned Flash, and then I figured out that Flash you could do minor interactive stuff. And I started doing these like little dress-up games. And again, I didn't think of them as games. It was just something for the website. And I found this website called Newgrounds. Excuse me. And Newgrounds was basically a web portal for Flash movies and some games, like very minor games. And Tom, the guy who ran it, was probably the only one that was making pretty close to games. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, whoa, like, wait a minute, like this guy is doing this by himself. Like this goes against all the things that I thought from before. And I got really interested in it. And I wasn't ever interested in programming, and programming is just not something that I'll ever be interested in doing. And if I'm not interested in it, I'm not gonna ever get as good as I need to be. So I started working with other people, and I started making Flash games. And by 2002, I think I'd made like 1 or 2 Flash games. Pretty basic stuff, but people seemed to really like it, and it seemed to be very different. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was learning with every game. And then by 2003, I had lost my real job, which is what I was making money off of. I was an animal control officer here locally, and I got fired. And it was just kind of like this path. Like I could either, quite literally, I could either get a job at Circuit City, or I could try to use what I'm good at to make money. And I was always really scared to do that because I was very afraid that I would grow to hate it. It was a big fear of mine. I needed this creative outlet to stay sane. And if I were to do it for a living, and I could grow to hate it. And if I grow to hate it, then I'm doomed. Like, it was a scary decision. And basically, I needed a portfolio and started volunteering my time illustration-wise different places. And one of the places that I found was a place down the street from where I lived, which was called Chronic Logic. And they had made a game called Bridge Builder. And I had played it. I had actually played it because someone on one of my forums or something like recommended it as a game to play. And I thought it was really cool. And I started working there. I volunteered my time for a few months, and then they hired me on. I was making like $350 a month doing like just random illustration work or whatever, which was more than enough for me to get by. I was just living in a room with my wife, then girlfriend, with my cat and ferret, and going to work and working on stuff. And then like I'd been working on this game that I mentioned before, P-Shy, and I was actually working on it with Tom. And Tom couldn't work on it anymore because he was working on this game called Alien Hominid. And he said it was going to take all of his time, and he couldn't work on little projects anymore. And I got a little depressed because it was going to be my first bigger game. So I decided, okay, I better bear down and try to make something cool. And I made this rough design for a game called Gish. and I pitched it to Chronic Logic, and it was very based around physics stuff. And Alex, the lead programmer, was really good at physics. That's what he was known for. And I was basically able to pitch it to them, and they really liked the idea. And then for about 8 months, we worked full time on this game and released it. And it made a lot of money. I mean, it's not that much money now. I mean, now it's considered a failure with an indie game. But back in 2003. I think it came out in 2004. In 2004, like, it was considered a big thing. Like, it was a big indie game back then. There was like nothing around. It was just crap. Like, even PopCap was doing horrible back then. Like, it was just a bunch of garbage. There was no portals. There was no Steam, no Xbox Live. There weren't any options. But there was this thing called the IGF, which we entered in, and we entered that in 1 year and we lost. And then the next year we entered it in 2005 and we won the grand prize. And that was it. Like, that sealed the deal. Like, I felt like I could do something. I love doing it, and I felt like I could do it pretty well, and I felt like I could get better. So I decided to just pull all in and just work on indie games. But it still took another 6 years of making shitloads of games in order to get the experience enough to get the attention of Microsoft or Nintendo or anybody.
So you mentioned that you were making games with Flash. How did you first learn Flash and kind of start using that software?
I took a class at Rio and I failed it. Literally. I dropped out. So I finished high school, whatever, and I had a scholarship to go to the Arts Academy in San Francisco, and I started going there. And my family's not. We're poor, and I was poor. And the only option I had was this scholarship, and I got it. And I started going there, and it was pretty lame, and I felt really out of place. But I was just going to do it because, you're told you go to college, you learn. Yeah. And I think about a week in, I got called in, and they said the scholarship that I was writing off of required me to hold a B average in order for them to get paid. And since I had no projected, I've only been there a week. I don't have a grade. So that meant that they weren't going to pay for it. So they needed some upfront money, and I think they needed like $15,000 or something stupid. And I remember telling my mom and calling her up and being like, I was taking the bus to the train all the way to San Francisco every day for a week. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to ask my grandma and my mom to go into debt for me when I'm not even feeling it. It's just not working for me. So I took my scholarship money, which ended up being, I think, close to $6,000 for 2 years when it's not being used up there, whatever money they could fall off with. And I went to Cabrillo and just took a bunch of bullshit classes. I was just, I didn't know what I was doing, and I thought I was just following what I was supposed to be doing. You go to college and you learn. And so I took it quite literally, and I just went there just to learn exactly what I needed. And I took a web design class, HTML. I took a Flash class. I took a Photoshop class. And I took a silk screening class or something like that. I failed all the classes but silk screening. But I learned enough of what I needed in order to go home and work. So I basically dropped out of college after the first year. And I was living with my grandma at the time, and all I did was just make shitloads of Flash animations and little Flash games. And back then you could make some money off of it. I think I was making $250 a month off of ads, porn ads, which is all you could make money off of then. And then the market crashed, and then it was you could make nothing. They paid you $1 per sign up instead of per click or something like that. It's $50 a month. But that's all I was doing, nonstop. Just making, just trading as much as I possibly could with what I learned. And everything else I learned from experience. You get your feet in the water with the basics. Someone can sit you down and show you how to use Photoshop and show you how to use Flash. And then if you are interested enough in it, and it makes you happy enough when you're doing it, you'll be motivated enough yourself to go and find tutorials and learn yourself and learn from experience. People ask me if I could put up tutorials online of drawing in Flash and that sort of stuff too. And once I did a time-lapse drawing of something I did in Flash, and all the comments were why'd you do it this way? That's not right. like this list of like things, and the thing is I'm sure I am. Like I'm sure I'm not as I'm not using the tools the way they're supposed to be used, but that's because I wasn't specifically taught exactly how to use it. I just figured it out myself. And you'd be surprised on how much you learn from just doing it yourself. It might not be the right way to do it, but if it gets the job done, it gets the job done. Yeah. And that's basically it. That's just learn the basics and jump in. Yeah. You know, if you love what you're doing, you're totally going to be motivated enough to get good at it. And you put in your time, and you're going to get better and better. Yeah. It's the way it works with everything.
Well, and it obviously worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, it took a while. Like, it's definitely an illusion right now, I think, to people where they see, like, this guy made Meat Boy and, you know, it made millions of dollars. You know, that seems to be what people assume. And they don't see the whole, like, you know, I made, like, 37 games before that. You know, like, I was poor for 10 years, and all I was doing was this. And the whole time I've got, like, you know, I have a wife, and we got to pay rent, and you got to live really cheap and get as much, you know, financial support as you can. And the whole time I've got my mom, like, clipping out jobs in the paper for me and sending them to me. You know, it's just like that sort of thing. Like,
yeah, they don't know the process.
No, nobody understands it. Like, it's a mystery. Like, I think most of my wife's family assumed that I sit around playing video games. Like for the first many years of our relationship, it seems like that's what I do. I mean, I pay the bills, but it seems like I'm just facing the computer when they come over, and it looks like I'm playing a game. So, yeah.
So you made Super Meat Boy with Tommy. Mm-hmm. How did you guys first meet up and start working together?
We actually we didn't meet, but we knew of each other from the Newgrounds days. We both were making Flash games and movies this exact same time, and he went by the name Tommyism. That was his like website, and my website was This Is a Cry for Help. And so those were our websites, and we were actually connected in a web ring, which I don't think they even do online anymore, but it was a bunch of websites associated with each other that would link. And so I knew Tommy. I knew of Tommy since then. And then in like, I think it was 2009. Was it? Might have been 2008. 2008, I think. He entered a game called Goo that he'd been working on. And Tommy's whole story is that he was pretty successful. He was a very successful programmer. Like he programmed like stuff for NASCAR and whatever else. And then he got fed up with the boring bullshit that he was programming and wanted a big change, moved to like Amsterdam. Amsterdam started working for like a company doing Xbox development, you know, like video game development that he wanted to do. He thought it would be cooler, and they treated him poorly, and he quit and then decided to do indie games. And he had enough money to float him for a while, and he put a couple years into this game called Goo, which was more or less a tech demo for like a really cool looking blob simulation. Mm-hmm. The tech was amazing. The game design really wasn't there. And I think it got a couple nominations for like tech, and I think it won an award for tech as well. And I met him at the IGF, and he was diabetic and he was really nervous, so he was like popping like jelly beans like the whole time. He's like, yeah, and we were like reminiscing on Newgrounds and whatever else, and we just kind of, we seemed to know each other. It's like, we seemed to know each other from the beginning, and when we got back home, we said, hey, you know, we should like try to make a game. We should prototype a game and like just see if we work well together. And we did this Flash game called Gray Matter and put it out and got it sponsored. And we worked so well together, and it was just so fun. It was just kind of like hanging out with a friend from high school. And he asked if I wanted to work on, you know, a bigger game, and it was around the time where I had released a compilation of all my games, and I had gotten the attention of Nintendo and Microsoft. And I was actually working on Gish 2 for Xbox Live, which ended up failing. But so I had these contacts there, and they're all asking, hey, you want to do, you know, a serious game on a console? And at the time, I had nobody who knew how to program for a console, but then Tommy did. And it was like, hey, well, why don't we do a small game and put it on the Wii? Because we were already developing, Gish 2 was supposed to be developed for Xbox, so we thought, oh, we'll just do a little Super Meat Boy, you know, a revamp of Meat Boy, the Flash game. For the Wii, it'll be just this little thing. And he came down and stayed at, he actually slept at our office downtown for like a couple months on the floor. And we worked on both. He was he's the second programmer for Gish 2, and he was the lead programmer and he wrote the engine for Super Meat Boy. And when we started that, things kind of went sour at Cryptic Sea, which was where we were making Gish 2, and that ended. And then we left there, and he came and stayed with me at my house so we could just kind of finish some stuff up, and we were able to like modify the deal, kind of flip it. You know, we can't do Gish 2, but what about Super Meat Boy with Microsoft? And we just jumped in. And, you know, it really did start out as a very small WiiWare game. Like, it's just this little simple revamp, you know, maybe 100 levels or something. And that turned into like 360 plus levels, right? Yeah. Just ballooned out of control. Yeah. And we worked on it for like almost 2 years. And that's basically, I met him and we jumped right in. Like, yeah. That was basically it.
Nice. Can you walk us through like a typical day of video game work for you?
Well, my days right now are not as exciting as they were. Things change.
Right. Maybe at like the peak of
the peak is horrible. I could say like the overarching structure of the year, if you're working on a game or whatever. Like right now, me and Tommy are working on. We're actually working on a remake of Meat Boy for like touch screen, like iPad, iPhone. People kept asking, you know, Meat Boy for touchscreen, whatever, for iPhone. And that's not going to happen because it's going to suck. And like, I'm sure everybody's played like control-based with arrow keys, and it's just a fucking mess. Yeah. And we knew right away it was impossible. But then last year we came up with like this very basic idea where it would be 2 buttons, and it seemed to work. But anyway, so we're starting on that. So usually the first few months of development is Tommy making an engine. I have nothing to do with anything. Like, it's just Tommy making an engine and an exporter. So he's currently rewriting an exporter. So like our last exporter exported PNGs out of Flash and animations, like a full rendered animation for his engine. The new exporter exports vectors. So it'll blow up to any size and we won't have any pixelations at all, which is really nice. And it'll actually run faster. So he's working on that, and he's going to be working on the engine. And once that's done, then I'll start jumping in and start doing, you know, all the art and just basic structure level design, stuff like that, just starting the flow. And then in the end, you'll start crunching. And it's like if you've got a deadline or whatever else, then it just goes into hellish work. And I don't think we'll ever get anywhere close to what it was when we were trying to crunch for our Xbox Live launch. And that was really hellish because we basically had to get like 4 months of work done in less than 2 months, and which meant just 5 hours at most of sleep and no breaks. Yeah. Like I would eat really fast, and I wouldn't leave. Like I couldn't leave the house even to get groceries. My wife would have to get her mom to like take her to the store and get groceries or whatever else, and it was horrible. And I don't remember most of it because it was such a blur. Like it all starts blurring together, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But sometimes with this sort of stuff, like if you need to eat, like both Tommy and I were negative money. Like I was $50,000 in debt because of a gallbladder surgery that I had, and Tommy was in debt, and just people were calling him constantly. His credit cards were just insane, and he kept telling them, "I'm not paying you. I don't have any money. I'm sorry. Like, can't do anything about this." And we're just holding on for dear life and just trying to get shit done. And when you're like that, and when the pressure is on, you just do it. Yeah. And you can definitely expect, even if you're not like crazy under pressure for some release on a console, you can expect the end of development to be quite stressful because releasing a game is very stressful and the workload is very heavy. But you know, there's something cool about it too. It's like running a marathon, and afterwards you feel pretty good about yourself because you've done something. You know, you pushed yourself to the limit, and you can keep pushing yourself, and it's cool in that respect. And you're in control. You know, it's you make your schedule, yeah. And at least somebody's just not like whipping you the whole time. You know?
Faster.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of touched on it there, but so how do you go about kind of starting a new game, you know, like with the planning and design phase of it?
When I usually start something new, the very early stages will be like basic prototyping ideas on paper, trying to see if it feels right for me. Like with Isaac, it kind of fell out of the sky. It was like a game jam, supposed to be a game jam game, and it was quite literally sitting in bed, I load up Legend of Zelda, and I look at the level structure, and then I think a roguelike could be applied to this almost seamlessly. Like with just some fine tuning, like you could easily turn this into a roguelike and actually randomly generate the levels. And I just basically ran through a bunch of things in my head. You know, you problem solve. And that's like the key to all development, is just problem solving in your head and seeing what holes you're going to fall into and how to, you know, bridge those, and or how to avoid those in the future. So, you know, I write down what I can. I usually come up with that first, and then I'll come up with like the basic feel of the game, the theme. And with Isaac, again, since I was playing around with a Legend of Zelda theme, I wanted to complement that in some way. And I decided to touch on the lonely aspects of Zelda, the fact that you're this kid who's just wandering around, you know, all alone. It's very, you know, you're isolated and lonely. And I just focused on that, and then brought in like more stuff from when I was little, and I had a very religious family on both sides, Catholic and born-again Christian. The born-again Christians were quite intense. And I heard a lot of, you know, if you do that, you're going to hell, and so on and so forth. And it can fuck with a kid, you know, like it, and that kind of just started pushing me in the direction that I felt comfortable going. And that's usually how it goes. It's just, if everything seems to be moving seamlessly in the direction that you're very comfortable with, it's usually the right way to go. And for me, everybody is different, but for me, I like to keep things very open. Like I have these basic ideas of what I want to do, and I want to do a roguelike based on Zelda structure. But I don't want to set anything in stone, because then you'll make mistakes. Like you'll run into things that just aren't fun. And like a lot of mainstream companies have to do this, because when you're running a bunch of people around, it's like, you know, I'm making a Spider-Man game and I really want him to swing from this beam, you know, because it looks really cool on paper, and we're sticking to that, do it. And it turns out it's not fun, but they're crunching and they can't cut that out and reinvent how to make that fun, so they have to leave it in. Yeah. And that's kind of how it works in the mainstream. Like you just get pushed along, and you've got so many people to wrangle that sometimes you can't improvise. Yeah. And when you're indie, you can improvise all you want. You know, you're on your own time. And that's what it was. It's just like in all games that I work on, it's let's see where the game goes. Let's see where the game naturally goes, and then just guide it kind of where we want it. But you can't just lock it into place, because then it's just going to snap somewhere. You know, you're going to have all these breaks that are just inconsistencies or not fun. And when you're indie, you can have that more organic feel and more improvised development structure, and it's quite fun. It keeps things interesting too. It makes your motivation stay up the whole time, because it's always changing. It's always surprising you, and it's like playing a game. Like it gets exciting as it goes. Like you put one mechanic in, like Isaac spits a fly, and the fly homes. This is something that just happened today. The fly like homes in on somebody. Like, wouldn't it be cool then if when you generated it and it couldn't home in on somebody, it would just circle you to protect you and then fly out? And then like that was something that kind of naturally happened in the code, and then it would morph into, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made it so if you picked up a certain item and whenever he got hit, like flies knocked out of his body because he was diseased or decaying or whatever else. Right. And then that turned into, well, maybe he could, whenever he hit a guy with one of his tears, he would also generate a fly that would shoot out at that guy. Like it just organically grows in a really cool direction if you're open to it. If you're just open to letting the game go where it wants to go, but also guide it where you want it to go. Right. And it's just like this a lot of happy accidents, really.
Yeah. not really, or it's kind of common knowledge, I guess, that indie game developers keep kind of strange hours. So I was gonna start asking everybody, like, what time do you generally go to bed, like on average night?
I go to sleep about 6 in the morning, and I wake up about 2.
Okay. So, can you tell us about the current game projects you're working on now? Or whatever you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on an expansion for The Binding of Isaac, which isn't something that I usually like doing or really have ever really done. I've added stuff to Meat Boy. I've added stuff to my other games. I've been adding stuff to Isaac, but this is the first like legitimate expansion that I've ever done for a game. And it was because I still really enjoyed working on it. And the development cycle for Isaac was very short. It was only 3 months of work. Yeah. And there was a lot that I felt like I didn't do that I could do and experiment more with. And I just wanted to do it. So I've got, like I said, I've got a 2-month gap because I can't do anything with the game that Tommy's working on right now that we're going to be working on together. So I got to fill my time with something. So I decided to work on an expansion, and that's what I'm doing now. And once that's finished, we'll start on actual heavy development for the iPhone Meat Boy.
So throughout the course of making these games, have you run into any kind of like common technical challenges or like design issues that kind of come up again and again?
Excuse me. It's definitely different depending on who I'm working with. I work with a lot of different people. When you work in Flash, there's problems, and they're usually like common in Flash. I'd say the most common thing when people are starting out making games, the biggest and most devastating mistake that you can make when you're starting is starting on a big game. Never, ever start on a game that takes more than a few months to make. Ever. Because you won't finish it. It'll be horrible because it's your first game. Your first game's gonna suck. Like everybody needs to know that. Like your first game won't be good. It just won't. And if it somehow magically is pretty good, that means that you're going to be a really good designer eventually. Right. But you learn as you go. And your first game, as an independent, when it's 1 or 2 people, it's gonna suck. And if you spend a year, 2 years, 3 years on it, that's a lot of wasted time. And it's just biting off more than you can chew. Like never get super ambitious. Do like the most basic possible things so you can learn. Because when you're making your first 5 games, it's all learning. That's what you're doing. Like you're gaining experience and you're learning. Don't set out to make a bunch of money. You're not gonna make money. If that's like your goal, you might as well be a company. Like there's no point in you being independent. Like you're your business then. Like anybody can make a shitload of money if they go and, make the next, what the fuck is that thing called? Like Farmville. Like come on. Like that's a business. Like that's a on paper game design. Like you don't need to prototype that. I know how to addict people to a game. Like come on, like gambling. Like it's easy. And they know it's easy and they're doing it. That's how you make money. Like if you want to make money like that, you can. But that's not game design. That's not a game. Like that's business structure. Right. If you want to make games and you want to get good at making games, don't worry about making money. Worry about learning and getting better. The money will come eventually if you decide to continue. Mm-hmm. But if you're like going in thinking that, I'm going to be the next Minecraft or Limbo or whatever, no one knows the real stories. Like no one knows that like Limbo was in development for like 7+ years and invested almost as much money as they've made. Like it's like no one hears about the failures of right. Like I worked on that game. I worked on Serious P-Shy for 3 years and ended up making like $3,000 off of it when it came out and it sucked. Why? Because like I held on to it, and even though it was one of my first games, I really wanted to finish it, and it was this big ambitious project, and it turns out it wasn't even that ambitious, but back then like it was an insanely ambitious project for me to work on. And I'm surprised it even saw the light of day. And I actually kind of regret that it does because it sucks. Like it wasn't good, and it's an embarrassment. It was what I was doing 3 years before. Like in that amount of time, it was like, wow, I've learned a lot, but I haven't applied it to the game that I'm currently working on, that I worked 3 years on, and that sucks. Right. And a lot of people make that mistake, and sadly, it's not as prominent as the successes of like, You know, it seems to everybody, oh, Notch made his first game and made bazillions of dollars on it. But no, he made a lot of games before that. No one knows about those games.
Right. That doesn't grab the headline.
No, it's like, it's just, it's the lottery thing, you know? I heard so-and-so won the lottery, so I better play every day. Like, just take your time. Like, take your time and enjoy it. That's what should be number one. It shouldn't be money. If it's money, just get a job somewhere. Like, get a job at a company. Get a job at PopCap or wherever.
Right.
You know, money's there. You can make money. But if you want to really make good games, focus on the games and don't worry about the money. I even like, somebody emailed me the other day saying like, hey, I'm working on my first game. I've been working on it for a year. It's a big RPG. I'm wondering if I should release it for free or if I should try to contact Steam and get it on Steam. Like, number one, it's not going to get on Steam. Like, they don't know who you are. They're probably not going to even respond to your emails. Like, you have no name for yourself. You have no proof that your game is even worthy of being looked at. Like, they're not going to look at the thousands of games people submit to them every day via email. It's like, it shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be, if this is your first game, your goal should be, I really hope a lot of people play it. That's number one. Like, that's all like, for the first, I don't know how many games, I didn't make any money off of the first maybe 7 or 8 games that I ever made. And it was all about, oh man, I hope people like this. I hope a lot of people play it. That's all I really cared about. And that's like one of the reasons why like we do, when we put Super Meat Boy in the Humble Bundle, I think like end up making like 33 cents per copy that we actually sell or whatever. And people are like, well, that's stupid. Like, why you're losing money or whatever. Right. But no, like, I want people to play. Like, that's why I don't fucking care if you steal my games. Like, yeah. I made them to be played. And if you're legitimately, you know, too poor or can't get them in your country or whatever else, then by all means, I don't care if you steal from me. I'm fine. Like, that's totally cool. Like, do what you got to do. And if you really like it, buy my next game. You know, I don't care. Like, I want people to play. It's the whole point. Like, that's the whole point of I'm doing this. I want people to experience what I spent time on, you know. And that should be the number one priority. And if it's not, there's a good chance that you're not going to make it. Because you're not going to stay happy enough to continue. Like, there's a lot of bullshit that is just involved. Like, you'll be bashed in the press, you'll be hated, you'll be all these things. You'll have a lot of ups and downs, and you better be in love with what you're doing, or it's just going to feel like a big kick in the ass the whole time. Yeah. And it's not going to feel worth it in the slightest.
There's kind of a cliche in the game industry about, you know, artists and programmers being like enemies and butting heads. Like, have you ever had any kind of experiences with, you know, the artist and the programmer?
Yeah,
having arguments or issues with each other.
That's hard. Yeah, I've had many of those experiences. That's one of the reasons why, you know, Gish 2 failed. Yeah, it's happened on more than one occasion. Toes are stepped on, you know. It's just like, it's kind of like the actor who wants to be a musician. You know, it's like you'd be surprised how many programmers want to be artists or vice versa. And there's egos involved, and shit happens, and you know, sometimes you step on toes and people get pissed off, even if you don't mean to. But I've had also really great situations where like the two people that I love working with the most are, of course, Tommy. You know, he's like my best friend. There's no toes to be stepped on because Tommy knows what he's really good at. And I'm not touching it. Like, I'm not there. There's no way. Like, I could put my whole rest of existence into trying to learn how to program, and I just wouldn't scratch the surface of what he does. So it's just like he does that. And he's also extremely good when it comes to like technical design, even like, you know, controls. Like, he's the one who did all the controls for Meat Boy and stuff like that. And like, that's his. And like, I do, you know, rough design, overall design, theme, character design, animation, and all the illustration. And he doesn't have any opinions on, especially, you know, illustration and stuff like that. And when actual game design, we mesh really well, and we're able to like, it's about being humble too. Like, I know I don't know it all, and I know I need people to like tell me if this feels right, if this is right, do you think this is right? Give me some feedback. And there's the art of being able to, of course, communicate and not be an asshole about it, you know. So it's about just kind of like being friends with the other person. And in the past, the things that don't work out are usually like, hey, I don't like something vague like, hey, I don't like that theme in the game that we're working on. Why? I don't know. I don't like it. And it's just like, well, what do you want? Where do I go with this? Like, and not to generalize, but it totally is generalizing. Programmers do tend to think in a completely different way than artists. And that, I think, usually is where a lot of the problems kind of arise. It's just a communication issue. And sometimes communication issues can spiral out of control, it's happened to me many times. So yeah, it's definitely hard, but as long as you keep the communication open and you stay friendly and you know your place, everything's fine. You're totally golden. And even if like you feel like you want your place to change, just communicate it, and it can probably be worked out. Like.
It's kind of that way with anything, really.
Yeah, it's a relationship like anything else.
Right.
When you're working with somebody for years, even maybe close quarters, you have a relationship with this person, and a lot of people, and it's not really a business relationship because it's not like there's not even money coming in yet. It's just like, hey, we're working on this project together. We know everything about each other. Like, let's be cool with each other and open with each other, and have fun.
Yeah.
But shit happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, dude, I've seen companies just implode over this sort of stuff.
Right.
It's definitely, it's one of the, on a minor scale, of course it happens in companies, but they're able to squelch it because they've got people who are hired that can do that, But when you're working with two people and one person's not happy, and if that person's not in the picture, then it's over. Like, there's a lot more on the line.
Is a lot higher.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, communication is very, very important, and staying humble is very, very important, and trying your best to listen to and understand both sides of the, is good and smart to pay attention to.
Right. So there's a whole culture and kind of community that's arisen around indie game development. You're obviously a big part of that. What's your opinion on the kind of current indie game dev scene?
It's weird. It's cool. It's really great to see so many motivated and creative people making great stuff, that's also motivating me and everybody else involved. Mm-hmm. It's really awesome. It's cool to see so many people doing it. But like anything, when you've got something that's, small and intimate and cool, and then it blows up and all the people are into it, there's going to be a bunch of people who are like, indie posers, or, you get the whole it's not cool to be indie anymore, and you get to hear the term indie hipster, and people get to hate you and talk shit about you. It's just with anything, anything gets too cool, people start being retarded about it. And that's, I guess, the only real negative that's happening right now. Everything else is extremely positive. It's amazing that so much money can be made from something like this. Yeah. It's quite the opposite of what's happening in the mainstream. It's indies are repairing the damage that the mainstream has done to video games. Yeah. Completely. That's what they are the Band-Aid. They are improving things greatly. They are giving people exactly what they want. And they're giving them so many options. It's there's no way you can't not find something that you really enjoy video game wise. And that's great. And the fact that people can actually make a living, even more so, make millions of dollars off of these little cool, intimate, creative projects that they've been working on, it's just amazing. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. I'm sure it's going to end one day. You notice things just ballooning, like the bundles and all that shit that's happening now, where everybody's bundling indie games, and I'm quite positive that that's going to have a negative effect on things in the future as far as how people view, the price of what they should be paying for an indie game, right, and all that sort of stuff too. It's no doubt will damage things, but it's really great, and it's great to be a part of it. And I hope it stays around for as long as it can. And if it breaks, I'm sure there'll be a sub-scene that'll grow back up again and balloon once again.
So you're a judge for the IGF. Can you tell us what that's like? looking on all those games that are submitted?
It's overwhelming when you start, for sure. Like this year, there was an ungodly amount of submissions, but luckily and kind of not luckily, a lot of the games were horrible. You know, with anything, when something gets popular, like we discussed, like when something gets really popular, it looks like a gold mine to people, and you know, everybody moves to California to get rich, and you know, there's a lot of people who are just kind of jumping in blindly, and like I said before, maybe their first, second, third game, you know, they don't really know what they're doing, and they submit a game and it's kind of a throwaway. But there are a lot of great games too, and there's a lot of games where you play it and you're like, wow, if this person continues to make games, they have major potential. Like, this person could make the next big, great game if they continue. And it's kind of a mindfuck in a lot of ways, because you don't, like, I feel really bad. Like, I don't leave negative feedback because I don't want to make anybody feel bad, because I've been through this so many times. Like, I think I've submitted like maybe 9 games to the IGF over the years. And I've made it in about 5 times, and I've won once. So I've lost a lot.
Right.
And I know what that feels like. And I know how stressful the IGF can be. It's very, very stressful, even if it's like, because you're so in the dark. And like a lot of people in indie games, you're so isolated and in your head, and you might believe that your game is the greatest fucking game in the world. Like, you like seriously believe that. And when you submit a game and you're like staying up the night that they announce or whatever to see, and then your game's not there, and then you feel like a loser, and it's hard. And it's definitely like a love-hate relationship I have with the IGF, where like I really enjoy a lot of my experiences with the IGF are the most memorable. Like the first time getting nominated and showing my game to people, my first, you know, it wasn't my first game, but my first bigger game, and actually handing people the controller and showing it was like amazing. It was a magical experience. Winning was on top of the world, and I learned a lot from it too. And in the end, it became a humbling thing, because I won, and then got really discouraged because I felt like, where could I go from here? Because back then, where would you go from there? Like there weren't other options. Like, and I thought I'd never make something else as good as this. But that in a way like got me to reboot. But yeah, the negatives, of course, is the stress involved in submitting to the IGF. I feel bad about judging games. I feel bad about, I mean, it doesn't make sense. You can't judge art like this. It really doesn't make sense. But I also feel like it has a place, and I feel like it should still happen, but I also feel like it shouldn't. So it's just, I feel conflicted about it for sure. But I still want to be a judge, because I don't want to be just this pessimist who just says, oh, the IGF sucks. You know, I'd like to at least put in my 2 cents and hopefully give something to the IGF, you know, like at least my opinion or something, instead of just complaining about it. But I think anybody who makes an indie game should go through the process just so they get the experience. It's a learning experience, and it's a humbling experience to lose, and which you're bound to do. Right. Losing is important, because you learn from it, even if it's really harsh and horrible. You do learn from it, and you grow, and it's just one of those things where it like puts you in a situation where I either keep going or I say, oh, this isn't for me. Right. And the IGF is definitely that thing. Like you either deal with the failure, or you're so crushed and say, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't want to fucking risk this bullshit. I'm done with indie games. It's cool, but it's also really cool to go there and meet all the people. Like, no matter how shitty it is, and I'm probably a little negative now because, like I was talking to you before, like sometimes judging games and talking to other developers and getting their opinions on things, it's like politics, and everybody has these different views that seem pretty extreme, and you lose faith in a lot of other developers, and it's just kind of a yucky experience. But every IGF at GDC, when people all get together and you're face to face, it's totally different. And for the most part, in real life, all indie developers really are really nice people, and really welcoming, genuine, because we're all, you know, social retard nerds. You know, so like when we all gather together, it's just like a big D&D bash, you know? It's like we all feel safe. And it's cool, and it's a great experience to just talk with a bunch of really creative, motivated people, and you leave feeling creative and motivated. Like, so it balances out for sure. Yeah, the IGF has definitely changed over time. I think it's gotten better, honestly. They've improved so many things. But it just sucks that not everybody can win.
This next question comes from my personal experience playing your games. Why do you make them so damn hard?
I make my games so damn hard. I make my games hard because it's important for things to be challenging, to be rewarding. Very important. It's life. Like, it's the way life works. If everything was easy, you would never feel good about anything. It's important to feel that sense of accomplishment in games. And I think I've used the analogy before, like nobody goes and runs a race so they can just all tie. You know, like it's just like, you know what I mean? Like you want to feel like you did something awesome. And in order to feel like you did something awesome, stuff needs to be challenging. Like you want to be a winner and you want to feel like I'm so cool, I did that. And in order for that to happen, it can't be artificial. It needs to be genuinely hard. That said, I try to make sure that things aren't frustrating. And I think that was the big thing that people, like when it went from, you know, the NES era or whatever, where games were really hard but very frustrating. And they jumped to consoles and everybody wanted to make the games fucking easy and everybody can beat them. There was just something lost in there. And I think people like look back at the old games thinking that is the flawed way to look at things. No one wants to play hard games anymore. They want to spend their $60 and see the end of the movie. You know, that's essentially what it is. Yeah. And I don't think games are made like to be that way. Like, you don't play chess because you're gonna win every time. Right. Like, it's
more of the journey.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's just so important to have that feedback there, that it's just been missing from so many games. Like, it's important to feel accomplished, and you can't feel accomplished unless you're actually really realistically challenged. So, you know, my games are hard, but not in a bad way, and in the best way possible. At least I hope. You know?
So following that question, how do you create or define the difficulty of the game, and then ramp that up as the player progresses?
I don't know. I don't know if I can put that into words. It's just you experience it yourself, and you just get a feel for the difficulty ramping. I mean, as far as removing frustration, it's just all about trying to think of things as logically as possible and trying to just get rid of all the old video game trope ideas, with gameplay, like question things. Question why in the latest Mario coins even exist when lives are pointless, What does it matter? Like, you're gonna get a continue and then continue again? What? Like, what does the one-up mushroom matter for? Why? Like, these things don't matter anymore. They matter in the first game, very much, because when you died, you start from the beginning. But they don't anymore, yet they still remain. And that was just the basic foundation of my thought process when making Meat Boy, and making any game, really. Like, what should I add here and why? What worked back then that doesn't work now? Why doesn't it work now? And how can I make it work? And just going down the line, just figuring out, like, how can I avoid frustration? How is frustration, created in Meat Boy? Frustration is created by having a penalty. So what's the penalty in Meat Boy if you don't have live system? Well, the penalty is how much time it takes for you to start playing again. So if we take that down to nothing, what do we have penalty-wise? Well, the penalty is how long it takes for you to get from the start to finish. Okay, well, what if we take that start to finish and make it really small? Okay, what's the penalty now? Well, the penalty is the visual of how much time do I see that I think it might take to get here that would discourage me if I die. Okay, well, let's make sure that the goal is always on the screen. So you see it from the beginning. And it's just, it's little stuff, but you're chipping away at it until it becomes, close to perfect. And that's basically it. Like, you just chip away at it logically, trying to, with one set goal. Like, you know, if it's like with Isaac, it has nothing to do with frustration lacking. It was with Isaac, it was how my goal is to create a unique experience every time you play. And my goal was, I wanted the game to trick myself. I wanted it to fool me. Right. And that was my big goal. And I knew that when I could trick myself, that I knew that I had done something well. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I was nicking away, like, well, should I randomize? Okay, I'm randomizing all these rooms. Should I randomize the rocks? And so, okay, I'm going to randomize all the rocks. I'm going to randomize the enemies. Okay, I should make it so, you know, 10% of the time, maybe the enemy is a little bit bigger and a little bit tougher, but it gives a little bit of more reward, so it randomizes even more. Okay, and then I'll randomize the little aspects of the items within those, and then I'll randomize the little aspects of you know, the chance of, like, even in the new expansion, like, if you kill one of those larger enemies that's special, which is only 10% of the time, it generates a pickup item. And the pickup item chooses between 7 different pickup items. And then within those 7 different pickup items, there are 3 sub items that it chooses from those. And now there's an ultra rare sub item within those. So it's like, how much can I put in this so every time they play, it is completely different, and it just creates the illusion of a completely new and fresh game. So it's like, when you're starting a game, you've got to just find its core. And with, you know, Meat Boy, it was difficulty without frustration, and with Isaac, it was replayability. And you find the core, and you just chip away everything else until that core is just very prominent. And I think you can find the core with every game. Like, even like John Blow's latest game, The Witness, so I know he's doing the exact same thing, because the core is puzzles. And, like, you know, he's really great at what he does, obviously. And you could see that he's chipping away, and there's puzzles within puzzles within puzzles, and then there's puzzles outside of puzzles, and it's just like, he found the core, the foundation of what he wanted, and he just chipped away until it was perfect, and then just built around with the same, you know, the same theme. And I think that's really the core of good game design. Like, find out what your goal is, and really interweave every aspect of the game into that goal. That's, yeah.
Makes sense. Oh, take off my sweatshirt quickly here. Alright. Okay, so there's millions of people around the world who are Super Meat Boy fans, myself included. And so you mentioned, you mentioned several times there's not going to be Super Meat Boy 2, but there's possibly going to be a touchscreen version.
Yeah, re-envisioning, right. I guess you could say.
So how does it feel to be kind of just wrapping up Super Meat Boy and moving on to the next thing? Like,
I wish Tommy was here, because he'd have a lot to say about this. Because it's been really bad for Tommy when, like, I love Super Meat Boy, of course. You know, Tommy loves Super Meat Boy. We owe a great deal to the game. You know, like, that this is, to a lot of people, we are Super Meat Boy, that's it, you know. But there's a story to this whole process. And a lot of people have heard different pieces of the puzzle, but the scope of it is that we fell in love with this game. We fucking fell in love with this game. And we put our whole heart and soul into it. We worked as hard as we possibly could. And what happened at the end of development with Microsoft was we crammed too much work into too little time and overloaded completely. After that happened, we had to port the game to PC within a month. So it was like insane stress and then insane stress. And with Tommy, he had to do all that stuff as fast as he possibly could, and he's one person. And this is the downsides of being independent. You've got a lot of freedom, but you're only 2 people. And so he was already totally overloaded, and all he could see is, like, the flaws in the games. Like, he sees the flaws, and that's what he's focusing. He's trying to fix the flaws. We released on PC and had a shitload of bugs because there's no way to test on, with Xbox easy. Works on everybody's Xbox. It's one Xbox. But everybody's got a different PC, different configuration, different antivirus program that blocks random files, all these different things that could possibly happen. And there were so many bugs for different people that he actually stayed up for like 48 hours just fixing bugs for the first 2 days of launch. Then the next month spent doing update every week to make sure it just worked perfectly on everybody's machine. Then we mistakenly promised a level editor sometime in a few months later. We started to rev back up again, and basically Tommy figured that he could actually write a system that would be like an automated portal. It's like a very ambitious thing. And he spent the next 6 months working on this thing for free and buying a server. We paid for the server, like all this stuff for free, and got burnt the fuck out. Like he had literally been working on the game for 2.5 years, and was no longer being paid or making money for what work he was doing in. It was just basically doing it because he promised and he was keeping his word. And then by the time that came out, we were going to do the Humble Bundle and we were supposed to do the Mac version, and we were like, okay, we're hiring somebody to do this, so we don't have to fucking do it. Right. So hired somebody to do it. They fucked it up. They didn't do it. We had a deadline, a very strict, hard deadline where we had to get something done. The guy's like bullshitting us the whole time, saying everything's done. And then like 2 weeks before the deadline, he's like, okay, here's what I have. And it looked like he'd worked on it for a few days. So Tommy's flipping out, and he decides, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. So he does the Mac port, and he does it in 4 days. It doesn't sleep. So because he needs to get this shit done. And this was actually when Skyrim came out, so he was really pissed that he wasn't able to play. And that's kind of like the story. Like, even though we love this game and it's given us everything we could ever possibly want, we're fucking done. We're fucking done with this game. And that's one of the reasons why, in a lot of ways, the remake for iPhone or whatever, it could be any other game. It's really not. I mean, it's Meat Boy the character, but it's a different game. It's totally a re-envisioning. You can't do the same things in both games. So it's not like we're still working on it. But we're tired of it, and we want to work on something else. Yeah. And for Tommy, all he sees is, in his mind, a shit game. He loves the game, right. But he just sees the flaws. He just sees the mistakes that he made that he can't go back and fix. Mm-hmm. And he just wants to do something new. And again, he worked on it for 2.5 years. You learn a lot in 2.5 years on a big game. Even if you've made a bunch of games, you get better. And he wants to move on and make something else. And we both just want to fucking move on and make something else. And that's why I made Isaac too. It was I just want to break away from that. It was really cool. I really loved it. I loved making it. It's great, but I'm not a one-dimensional person, and I'm not Meat Boy. Right. I feel like I can outdo that game. I know for a fact that I can outdo that game, and I love to show people that I can. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I feel about it right now. I love it, but I totally am tired of it.
Right. Yeah.
Which
is understandable. Given how much time you spent on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so following Super Meat Boy, you released The Binding of Isaac, which is also an awesome game. And you kind of touched on it before, but it has a really, kind of dark religious theme. How did you kind of decide for that theme for the story of the game?
Well, I kind of went in going just even though Meat Boy was totally independent, right? An independent game. It wasn't completely independent because we still had to answer to Microsoft, mm-hmm. and eventually Steam or whatever else. And when I say answer to, it's not as big of a deal as making it seem like we could do whatever we wanted to do, but they're just minor things where if I wanted to put something in the game that I thought was funny but was maybe a little too adult, I knew it would get an M rating. And then I knew if it got an M rating that less people would be able to play it, and that would go against the whole idea of me trying to make a living off of something, but also staying true to the vision of the game. Right. So you just have these minor, conflictions in your head where it's maybe I want to do this, but I really don't realistically have all the freedom in the world to do whatever I want with this game, because I still got this publisher who's investing in publishing in this game, and they didn't really invest, but you know what I mean. And I've got to answer to them, and I've got expectations to go by.
Yeah.
Now with Isaac, it was, I want to do something. And it was a fuck you. It was a fuck you to everything. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
Right.
And I'm not going to even get a rating. Fuck that. Like, I am not going to rate this. I'm not going to apologize for this. I'm not even going to fucking explain it. I'm going to make it, and I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm not going to self-censor myself. I'm just going to let it all come out, and wherever it falls, it lays. That's it. And that was it. And it was quite literally it. It was just, I want to do something completely unbridled. And I don't want to think about making money. I didn't care. Like, it was a prototype. It was supposed to be like a little prototype, like a week-long game jam. And I saw potential in it, so we continued to work on it. We worked on it for 3 months and put it out. About 2.5 months in, for that 2.5 months, I was going to release the game for free. Mm-hmm. It was just like, who's going to buy this? Like, I didn't foresee anybody caring. It just seemed way too weird, way too dark. The design seemed way too discouraging. I didn't think people would ever jump on a game that had, permadeath like that, even though it was designed, to counteract that. Yeah. I just didn't think people would get it. And then a game called Dungeons of Dreadmore came out, which was a roguelike, and I heard it did really well. And I thought, oh, maybe there is some hope here. And I started talking to a few people, and that's when I started actually sending it to other developers, saying, like, you think people would pay for this? And they were like, yeah, like, totally. You charge like $15, $10 for that. It felt weird that I would charge that much for a game that I only spent 3 months on. So I sent it to Steam, and I said, would you guys want to publish this? Because of course I was, worried. Like I don't think anybody's going to get behind this. Like, and they were like, of course we will publish this. Like, no question. Like, this is awesome. How much do you want to charge for it? And I'm like, well, how much do you think I should charge for it? And they're like, well, Dungeons of Dreadmore was $5. And then I said, fine, $5. You have $5. I don't care. I didn't think it would sell more than 30,000 copies. I promise you that. Like, I didn't expect it to sell at all. And now it's like closing in on 400,000 copies. It's just like, it's beautiful. like it is, it's beyond inspiring. Like, never in a million years would I have thought that this game that I went out of my way to make I just didn't care. Like, I wasn't thinking about anybody, but I just wanted to make something kind of for me, and I wanted to talk about things that I thought were interesting, and in a lot of ways it was a discussion with myself where, I was talking about, growing up with religion, and, how it kind of fucks with you, and how kind of fucked up it is, and just to make people think, make me think. I was dancing around a lot of different things, and I was learning a lot from it. Never in a million years would I thought that anybody else would like go in and think, oh, this is cool. And that's really cool. And it makes me want to like challenge myself more and do even riskier things and weirder things and more expressive and personal things. And it was out of the blue. It was a really out of the blue thing. And like, I mean, what are you gonna say? Like, I didn't expect it to happen. The idea came from nowhere, and it just felt right. So I kept working on it. And regretfully, Tommy was on vacation at the time. I would have made the game with him. But it was fun working with Florian. I'd made games with him in the past, and he could definitely use the money. So it all worked.
Yeah, I think it worked really well. I've been enjoying that game a lot. But I haven't seen Mom yet.
You'll see her. Everybody eventually sees her. It was pretty interesting. I was talking to Derek Yu, who's the artist of Aquaria and the designer and artist of Spelunky, which is an amazing game. It was one of the major inspirations for Isaac. And I was talking to him on Skype, and he was asking, we're talking about difficulty, and we're trying to like just brainstorm some difficulty stuff for Spelunky. And he asked me to look and see, like, statistically, how many people have completed the game. in Binding of Isaac. So you like look on Meat Boy, and that's a difficult game. And I think like something like maybe close to 8% of people who actually own the game complete it. The funny thing is though, is like it's so hardcore where like 8% of people who beat the game of all the, you know, the 1,100,000 whatever plus it is now, have completed the game. And then only 6%, like 2% less, complete the Dark World, and then 4% actually 100% the game. So it's like you have this super hardcore fan base who are like, if you beat the game, there's a really high probability you're going to play until it's fucking completed. Right. With Isaac, though, which I actually thought was going to be even more of a challenge for people, and I look on there, and 36% of the people who own it beat the game. It's like, what? Yeah. Like, I never. That's surprising. Yeah, it's very surprising, but it's also should be encouraging. Yeah. Because, I mean, the funny thing is, so my wife was the number one playtester on that, and she playtested Meat Boy, but it wasn't really her game, you know. Isaac is definitely her game, and she's actually 100% of the game, and she's put in well over 120 hours. Like, that's one of the reasons why I really fell in love with development, because I saw my wife playing it and like really liking it. So I wanted to make it even better. And it's also, honestly, one of the reasons why I'm doing the expansion, because she's done. She's 100% of the game. So I know for a fact that it'll suck her right back in once I finish this. Yeah, it's a good motivator to keep working on it. But yeah, it's odd to see those kind of statistics. And I feel like I'm going in the right direction, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Going back to some kind of like workflow stuff, how do you manage your time and stay on track with like everything you need to do?
That's a good question. And my wife asked me the same thing, and I really wish I had an answer. I'm just a self-motivated person. And like I said, like, I've made projects for myself since I was very young. And I don't have an answer. Like, I just have a subconscious tally of what I need to do and when I need to do it. And I make my own deadlines, and I always hit the deadlines. You just do it. Like, you get a feel for it over the years. It's very important when you're independent to be self-motivated. Like, that's probably your number one quality. Right. Like, you can't be easily distracted, and it's just crucial to be self-motivated. You need to be able to get that feedback from what you're doing, which falls back on you need to be able to love what you're doing, really enjoy the creative process and not the outcome. Because the outcome usually sucks. It's usually pretty depressing to release a game. Not many people even realize that, but it is. It's like, you go through this like postpartum depression after you release something, and like the more time you spend on the project, the harder it is. Right. Like you just feel like empty. Yeah. Like it's because you've invested. Yeah, it feels like, well, yeah, it feels like you had this girlfriend that you loved, you know, for 2 years or whatever, and then she just is whoring around. You know, like she's everybody else's now, and she's no longer yours. Yeah. Like you can't touch her anymore, right. But everybody else has her. Yeah. You know, it's just kind of like this empty feeling of like it just feels empty, and it feels depressing. And most developers will go through this. And the more you personally invest in the project, the more you're going to feel it. So yeah, releasing a game usually kind of sucks, but it's all about being in love with the process. Right. And if you're in love with the process, you're going to be so self-motivated. It's not even going to be something you think about. Yeah. And yeah, like even with people ask this, like, how did you and Tommy stay on track? How did you hit deadlines? Blah, blah, blah. Fuck if I know. Like, I think on like 5 different occasions, Tommy and I are friends with Matthew Wegner, who's was one of the IGF heads, and like ran Flashbang Studios, and Velociraptor Safari and all that stuff. And he's like very about efficiency and like staying on track, and like he always talks about in depth about like all these different strategies he uses to optimize, you know, work. Right. You know, even like standing up and working for a couple months and seeing if that got more work done than whatever else. And like me and Tommy were like just the opposite. Like I wish I had some input here about this, because it would be nice to share, but we tried. Yeah. Like I remember we tried to use like all these different programs to stay on track, and we never used them. Like it was just like we'd write like 2 things down just so we know, but we just know like when when you are living the project, you know what's next. You know what has to be done. You know the deadlines and you know how long it takes for things to finish. Right. And you just go with the flow. And with Meat Boy, it was like, how could we not know? Like, we know when the fucking deadlines are. Like, that's like our death date. Like, yeah, like, of course you know. You can't fucking forget. It's burned into your brain for forever. And you know what needs to be done because, like, that's what's freaking you out at night because that's all you're thinking about. But, yeah, no, it's, just do it. Yeah. Like, sometimes I'll write shit down on a piece of paper. Just do it what works for you. And I think it's just so different for everybody else. You know, everybody's going to be different. So I don't even think recommending something will even work because it probably won't even apply to the way you work. Yeah. Do what works.
Good advice. You mentioned your wife does play testing. What are the other ways you handle play testing your games, making sure you get all the bugs out, all that kind of stuff?
I usually will hand it off to a few friends and ask them for feedback. If it's a bigger game, like with Isaac, I didn't actually care much about playtesting because like I said, it was just like, I didn't think anybody was going to care either way. So, and it was also I knew it was kind of impossible to playtest. Like I knew any bugs that were going to be found were going to be combination bugs. Like if you get X item, and like when you've got 131 items, and I'm not going to know what the combination of the 3 items are. You know, it's like lottery numbers at that point. So I knew that stuff was going to come up, and I knew that if people bought it, they would tell me, and I'd fix it. Right. And the cool thing about making independent games as well is that the people who are your fans are very understanding, and as long as you keep up, you're good to go. Sad thing is the more people who play, the more misunderstandings there are. Yeah. Like with Meat Boy, there were a lot of misunderstandings. People just totally fucking missed the fact that there's one person that is fixing these bugs. There's one person that is responding to the tech support emails, and that one person has fixed, 99% of all the problems with everything. But yet, one guy in Oklahoma can't run the game correctly, then messages Tommy, calling him a fag, and then Tommy tells him to fuck off, and then he decides to post it on Reddit, and suddenly, Tommy Reffinus, biggest asshole in the world. That shit happens, but luckily I don't, mom people will have to worry about that.
In your opinion, how important is the community of players that kind of arises around a new video game once it's released?
I don't know. I'm gonna say it's good because usually they're really helpful, and yeah, I will say that the people who really love the game and who are really the fan base or whatever are incredibly helpful people. We've had people make fan websites, wikis for us, and even help us with issues with bugs and stuff like that, giving us good solid feedback. And of course, fan mail that we get, I get fan mail that makes me tear up because it's so awesome, and those are huge motivators, and that's the kind of stuff that keeps me going. That's the kind of stuff that makes me feel like this is what I'm doing and this is what I want to continue to do. Sadly, the negatives always scream louder. When you make something that's popular, you're going to have a lot of assholes that are going to try to break you down. It's just the way it works. Yeah.
And how do you deal with when you get all that negative?
You just get calloused over time. And I feel like I'm quite calloused. I've been hated for forever. From my early days, back when there were a handful of people who knew me, there was a few of those people who hated me and wanted to make sure that I knew it. And that's going to happen. And the more popular your work becomes or whatever else, that number will of course grow. Doesn't bother me anymore. In a lot of ways, it used to be a big motivator because I used to be I actually told this story recently. It happened in Santa Cruz, so it's valid. Way back when, before I was making games, I made this comic called "This Is a Cry for Help," and it got in some local newspapers. and I got this email like basically calling me like I'm a fat fag and I'm a no talent hack and so on and so forth. And I was like, who the fuck is this? And I always search. I'll just grab it, the email, and search it. And then I was able to trace it back to somebody in Santa Cruz who I knew personally. And and he was somebody who worked at Hot Topic in the mall. And I even confronted him. He said some bullshit story about how like his friend was drunk and got on his computer. It's just like, I'm like, yeah, all right. And that was one of those things where it's like, you know what, like, I'm gonna do something great and you're gonna know about it. These are these little biting, motivators. Yeah. Like, I'll show you what a fat fag does, Mr. Hot Topic, and of course those things can be motivating, but again, it's different for each person. Like, I'm a calloused person, right. I don't like people. You're on my shit list until you're not. Like, everybody is a horrible person until they're nice, and that's just the way I work. So it's disheartening though. Like, I've seen so many fucking horrible things said about really genuinely gentle, nice, kind people who seem so soft, and I know it takes a toll. And it's painful. And like, that's why I sometimes get in trouble for like going out of my way. I will mock those trolls. And I've done it many times. And I'd rather have the attention on me, and I'd rather be, the target than somebody who I felt like is new to the scene, who gets heckled by a bunch of people because he put his feelings out there and everybody mocked him. It's like fucked. And that's what the internet is, though. It's just this like fucking cesspool of fucking trolls. Anonymous people who want to be assholes. But over time, you just get numb to it. Yeah. And you're able to just not really care, or just not look for it, not look at it. And you can just take the positives. But we have that fucked up human brain that likes to focus on negatives and make the negatives scream so much louder than the positives. Right. It's kind of weird, like how like, some little asshole in some other town who doesn't know you, will never do anything, can say something to somebody and just destroy them. And like,
yeah, and the internet facilitates that.
Yeah, it's like it is part of making independent games, sadly. It is. Especially if you push yourself into the spotlight, which sometimes you really have to do if you want to really make a career for yourself, or if you're even passionate about what you're doing, you're going to talk about it. Like even John Blow, like he got fucking shit on. And people like call him pretentious, and I know him personally. And like, he's just such the humblest, nicest guy. Like, it's just mind-blowing. But like, people hate on him because it makes them feel not as smart, I guess. Right. And, you get over it. But it's definitely, we talk about it in any game in the movie for sure. Everybody involved. Any successful indie knows what it's like to be heckled. Yeah. For no reason. Like, if you don't like me, I don't fucking care. Yeah. I know not everybody's gonna like me. I understand that. But to go out of your way to attempt to hurt me, like I've had some vicious shit said. Like when I was in the hospital, when I got my gallbladder taken out, I was in the hospital for 3 days. I was really sick. And while I was sick, my wife, we didn't have any money. My wife put up a donation thing. Like, Edmund's in the hospital, we don't have any money. It's gonna be $50,000, blah, blah, blah. And people started donating. And I got home, she told me about it, and I was, of course, like very emotional. I was also high on morphine, so it was a bit crazy. So I'm calling people and thanking them for their donations, and I'm just seeing like people come in and save the day. And then I like mistakenly go to like the TIG source front page where it was posted by Derek, and like there's people who are wishing that I died. It's like, at this point now, it's like if I saw that now, people, say that shit all the time. But like at that point in time, that legitimately hurt me. Yeah. Like it just got me at like that moment in time where like I felt like the doctor thought I had cancer. Like shit went down. Like right. I was at the lowest low, and then somebody just decided to kick me. Right. And it got me. And like, that was the one time where I really felt it. And I know for a fact that other people feel it, and it's just so fucked up that people would do that. But people are fucking evil.
Yeah. Especially on
Yeah, but like I said, luckily there's the polar opposite as well, where you'll get such a genuinely kind and loving email that just fills you up so much that you're just floating around for a week, you know? And, you know, ups and downs.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works.
So if you weren't a game developer, what do you think you would be doing for a living instead?
If I didn't get fired from animal control, I'd be an animal control officer. No doubt. Like, I really like that job. It was really, really fun. New experience every day. It was like being a cop without all the negatives, you know?
Right.
Like, it was cool. Rescuing animals was cool, and just dealing with animals was cool. And I was on my own time, my own kind of schedule, and took my own calls when I wanted to, and it was pretty cool. The ladies that I worked with were fucking bitches. And they were nuts. They were all like, just not skilled enough to do it. And what happened was like, we went from like, we were first owned by the SPCA and then it went county. And when things went county, they got like really serious and they started looking into like credentials, which they didn't have. So there was just like this total paranoia. And they were so paranoid, and we started out with 5 of us, that they started like getting together and firing the people that were more qualified, because they didn't want to get fired, because they knew that someone was going to get fired. And we ended up being down to 3 people. And I found out, because I'm not an idiot, I just went on their computer and there was a fucking disc that said Edmund on it. Like, my name is on this fucking disc. Like, I'm not going to look and see what it is. I pop it in, and it's this like graph of like the past 4 months of like when I didn't fill up the tank all the way in the van, when I didn't clean out the van, like when I was 5 minutes late to work or whatever else. And I could see that they were trying to fire me, so I quit. And then like they begged me to come back, and I came back because I didn't have any other means of making money. I came back because they promised me everything was fine, but then of course they were just doing it until they could find somebody else to fire me, and they fired me. Yeah. But I would totally be doing that. I have no fucking clue. Like, if I was forced into just doing art for a living, I would hope that I would eventually make it here. Like, that was always my goal. Like, this all stemmed from when I was a freshman in high school. A local artist, his name's Clay Butler, came to my school and told everybody in the class about independent art. And he was a comic artist. And he had a syndicated comic strip called Sidewalk Bubblegum in the paper, and he had a show on public access, 2 shows. It was the Bill and Clay show and a show called Yada Yada. And then he also had an animation in the Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation. This fucking guy was like a god to me. Like, and I think I was the only person in the room that thought so. And like, I was literally like in awe of him. And like, when everybody left for recess, I just stayed in the room with him and just talked to him. And I didn't find this out until actually just recently. He told me, I thought he just liked me. But he ended up coming over to my house because I said, I'm going to make comics like you and blah, blah, blah. And I started working on a comic, and he came over to my house to look at my comic. The reason why he came over is because one of the teachers said that I was like a troubled youth and like that I could use the motivation, and that she saw that like, that there was something there, so she asked him if he could come over and like kind of mentor me in a way. And I became his cameraman, and it just turned me on to this totally magical world of what it would be to be an independent artist, like doing what you wanted to do, and how badass would that be, like. And I was totally in awe, and that was like the moment for me. And I knew what I wanted to do, and it wasn't specifically like what I was going to do in order to secure rent and food and whatever else. I didn't know. But I knew what I wanted to do, and my goal was to be self-sustainable and do my own stuff. I didn't know how, you know, and I just pushed towards that goal. And it took, 10 plus years. But I just stuck to it because I'd hope that eventually, something would happen. Yeah. And I'd like to think that if I wasn't doing this, that whatever else I'd be doing would hopefully make me financially stable. But at least, regardless, I was happy the whole time. And I could be, making 20 grand a year like I was, 3 years ago for the rest of my life. just doing little games and comics or whatever else, and I'd be just as happy as I am now. You'd be surprised how little money actually affects things.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still exactly the same fucking person. I just have some security. That's basically it.
Yeah, that's good. So I realize you might not be able to give us specific details, but what can you tell us about the next game coming from Team Meat?
I can't talk about that game. I can tell you that one of the reasons why I did Isaac was because I was prototyping roguelike ideas. Like I wanted to get my feet in the water. So I wasn't totally in the dark with this bigger game.
Right.
We'll probably start on it probably when the iPhone stuff is finishing. It's a big project though, and I expect it to be probably 2 years in development. And we'll just see where it goes. We have, you know, like I said, I don't like putting everything in stone, and one of the things that I definitely learned from Meat Boy was just not talk about it until it's actually in development, because you never know what's going to happen. Like, I think we were like 8 months into development with Super Meat Boy, and people were already like saying, "This is the Duke Nukem Forever of indie games." So people online like have a very odd sense of time,
Right.
sense of everything, really.
Yeah.
So no.
Okay.
It'll be a 2D game with platforming elements that is character driven, which every basic thing that I've ever done is.
Right.
And I think it'll be the prettiest game I've ever done.
Okay.
Like there's my one kind of regret, I guess, or the one thing that I just like bothers me is that I in the past 8 years I've put most of my effort into game design, which I've gotten better at. But when it came to illustration, I didn't really grow because I was doing the standard. I was just doing what I was good at, and I never really pushed anything. I never really experimented with my art. And I think with this new game, I think more people will, like I would love it if people would say, that Team Meat game looks great visually. Like, because I'm an illustrator, and that's what I did before I did games, and it would be nice for people to look at something and say, well, that's really pretty, because no one said that about anything I've ever done, and I think they look pretty, but mostly they just get the job done for the game design. But so I think visually that the new game will be my best looking game. And technically, it'll actually help too. Like I said, the vector exporter will make everything look really, really crisp and high detail and HD. So.
Sweet. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So, what advice would you give to people who want to get started in video game development themselves?
Start really small. Make sure that you're doing it because you are having fun with it. Fun the foremost. Experiment as much as you can, and don't be afraid of making mistakes because you're going to make them regardless. Like, just be okay with failing because you're going to do it a lot, and that's how you learn. Put as much of yourself into the game as possible. Like, you're not an expert, so write about what you know. Like everything that I've created is loosely based on something I've experienced or something I know personally, because I'm not a really good writer. I can't write fiction. I could never write believable fiction that I've never experienced myself in any way. Right. So I keep things close so they're genuine, they're expressive or whatever else. Just write about yourself, write about your own feelings and whatever. Don't fucking make spaceship game in the space. Where you shoot things. It's nothing to do with anything. Like, but in a lot of ways, like, I think that stuff will naturally come out if you just loosen up, let it come out, experiment with things, and have fun with it. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Keep it small. Keep it simple, and don't put money as your goal because you're going to be disappointed. Like. Don't think you're going to make $1 million off of your first game. Don't think you're going to make $10 off your first game. Just don't think you're going to make anything, and then you'll be really happy when it does make something. Right. Just keep it all little. Keep it little and tidy, and experiment as much as you can. Prototypes. Just work.
Yeah. That brings me to the final question, kind of little bit tricky for some people, but if you had to sum up game design and development in just one word, what would that one word be?
Logic.
All right, Evan. Thanks a lot for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem.